James, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh, where do we start? So, I'm an investor. I started out in real estate as an investor. Um, I've gotten licensed as an agent as well to help facilitate residential transactions.
Mhm.
So, kind of living in two different worlds in a way, but they all kind of intersect. So,
Very interesting. So then you start off as an investor and then you ended up getting licensed afterwards.
yeah.
Um, so what was that like? Because I thought about doing that too, but I don't enjoy school. Um,
Me,
so
well, I
so
like learning, but
yeah, I like learning too, but the whole test taking and all that, not a big fan of.
yeah.
So then I guess as an investor, how did you start off? And yeah, how did you start off with that?
So initially, like just going back to kind of the beginning, the kind of the seed goes back to like my dad telling me to buy a duplex and live in one side.
Mhm.
I didn't do that, but I did buy a house with my brother, and then kind of used the equity from the house. I ended up buying by myself to start investing.
Mhm.
Um, but I went to Bigger Pockets. A lot of people have heard of Bigger Pockets. Started just
Mhm.
devouring the podcasts and
Yep.
bought quite a few of their books. And now what's cool is like they're based here in Denver, and I've got to meet like all the founders and the kind of key players, which is neat. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I got started, and then I had to figure out what to do, which direction to go. We've talked about this before, like there's so many different ways to go, which is like it's a double-edged sword because you're
Mhm.
like, I can make money doing all these different things, but oh my God, if you try, you can't do them all, right? You have to
Yeah.
become an expert. So that's kind of the key. So I constantly struggle with it, but we've kind of
Mhm.
figured out, the direction we want to go, which is kind of like three different
Uh,
related ones. So we can get into
yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like you have had that same problem where I want to do so many different things. And I think Pace explained it really well last week or the week before, where he said, if I told you there's a gold bar in this one haystack, would you continue going through it, right? Or if I told you there's a gold bar in one of these 10 haystacks, how soon before you gave up uh, to go find another one or check the other one, right?
Mm.
Um, so that has really helped me narrow down my focus and to say this is what I'm going to do. Um, but anyways, so the one that the house that you bought with your brother, how did you
Mm.
evaluate it? How did you know it was going to make money?
It was just a primary residence, so that we moved
Oh,
in.
hmm
Uh, we did rent out one room in it
hmm
at one point, but that kind of started it. Like, get my own primary,
yeah,
build some equity. He ended up moving back to Alaska, where we're from, sold it, and then I went and bought a couple different primaries, kind of bounced from one to,
hmm
to the next.
yeah,
Then bought my last one in '06. This is timing's important. We
uh-huh.
can't control the market, but I bought it in 2006 before the 2008,
Yeah,
you
hmm
know. And at that time, I'm like, I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna build equity in it. And I didn't really understand how you leverage at that time, but I was like,
hmm
I'm going that direction. I'll figure it out
yeah,
and start buying rentals the traditional way. That's the only thing I knew
yeah,
about. Well, then '08 hit and I'm like, oh, I have zero equity being built. It's gone down. So it took a while for that to come back up.
hmm
But eventually it did, I was able to stay in it. I turned that into, I in Denver, Airbnb, it has to be your primary residence.
hmm
But it was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. So I had my bedroom and an office and another bedroom that had its own bathroom. So I
hmm
rented that out on Airbnb, was a super host, and it paid my brand new truck payment. So that was a beautiful thing. I'm like, man, real estate's amazing when it works right.
yeah, yeah. So you're just house hacking, right? That's a good way to start.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's how I started. I was renting out my basement, and it made my turned my mortgage payment into less than what it would cost to live in a studio apartment. So it was pretty nice.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell like younger people, especially like do the nomad method, which is, buying a primary that's got enough rooms to rent out,
Hmm.
and then you have to live there for 1 year. But the
Hmm.
benefit is when it's your primary, you're only putting down maybe like 3.5% down and you get a better rate versus
Hmm.
if you go buy an investment property, as you know, you
Yeah.
got to put down 20, 25%.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if you just do that, keep that original one, you go get another FHA loan with 3.5% down, live in it for a year at least, and
Hmm.
then go buy another. Like if that's all you do and you start young when you don't mind having roommates,
Yeah.
that's that. I mean, you become a rich person without having to go through a lot of the stuff like I'm having to go through trying to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I'm with you. I always encourage people if they can start off young, definitely do it. But at 20, in my 20s, I was probably not ready for any of that, just mindset wise.
right. I don't
Yeah.
know, man. I wasn't either. I mean, I was in this snowboarding and like I wasn't thinking long term and there wasn't things like bigger pockets to kind of open your eyes to this kind of stuff back then. But I'll go to RIA events where there's
Mhm.
young guys trying to figure it out. Now I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
I should have been doing that. But like these guys are amazing. It's cool
It's
that
really,
people are figuring it out.
yeah, it's really cool to see. I like that. So you kind of jumped around, you're doing a lot of house hacking. And then, I mean, what was your next step? What did you do next?
Mm. Well, so I was going to a lot of RIA events, and I met Toby Hansen, who's now my business partner. And we were both kind of in the same spot. We were in our late 40s, turning 50 and going, man, we are not where we need to be.
Hmm.
And he's a smart dude. Um, kind of had some similar background. Like I was a graphic designer, copywriter. He was doing digital marketing, like more of the, technical stuff, which is not that's not my zone of genius.
Hmm.
Um, at first I thought we were very similar, and they say like partners, it should be different, like a Jobs and a Wozniak, like some of these like really powerful partnerships,
Hmm.
people are different, right?
Right.
And at first I thought we were super similar. Then I found out like as we got to know each other, quite a bit different in a good way that, um, he's like I'm better like just talking with people and creating relationships, which is super important. He's better back end. He loves to
Hmm.
geek out on CRMs and stuff. He's got his limits too. I mean, some of that can get frustrating, but I
Yeah.
just bring that up because um, it, we we had similar goals, similar backgrounds, but we had to figure out like what direction to go. And Toby's really good at researching different models and really understanding deeply like how they work and the good side and the bad side. And so,
Hmm.
we were looking at fix and flipping. That's what people think about. House hacking and fix and flipping. That's kind of the main things, right? Well,
Hmm.
house hacking, you can't scale fast.
Hmm.
Fix and flipping, that's a job, highly
Yep.
risky for many reasons. Um, and we didn't have any expertise in that. You got to know what the hell you're doing, with that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so then we started kind of looking around and then we landed on rent to own
Hmm.
for many reasons, as you know well. Um, you've got it kind of comes down to who who the rent to own buyer is, right? You've the way we do it, there's different ways of doing it. The way we do it is a little different than how you and I were taught with our first mentors, right?
Hmm.
Um, we find the buyer first and then let them, as long as they qualify for our program, like we're being super selective, which we'll kind of talk about more, but trying to find people that have 10% or more to put down 10% of the purchase price.
Hmm.
Once we have them, we let them pick out a home on market and we'll go buy that house for them. So that money they put down is non-refundable.
Hmm.
So they're committed to, keeping that money and getting the house. And we do everything in our power to set them up for success, right? So we work with a lender in the beginning to find out like why they can't qualify, what they need to do, how long to give them. So we kind of it's a lease option, but it's a reverse lease option. Um, so um, then we let them pick out the house. So they're not having to pick out just some random homes that might not be a good fit. Like they just pick out anything on the market.
Hmm.
Um, and then we buy it for them. So that's it's a good thing for them. It's a good thing for us because, we're not dealing with a regular renter that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily give a shit about the house or us, right?
Right. Hmm.
It's more about them and their skin in the game. So they're going to take care of it. And we ask them to take care of the property. There's um, different levels. Like we put a limit on it, like how much we're asking them to take care of. But, they're kind of look at them like homeowners in training.
Right.
So, and like the one we've got right now, this was one where we actually converted a regular rental into a rent to own.
Hmm.
It's a different model. And they didn't have to put down as much, and we gave them more time than normal. Like usually most people that we work with need 2 to 3 years. Um, we gave them 10 years, which is kind of the limit you can do. Um, but they've never lived in a home. They've only lived in apartments. So there's a lot of training. I'm
Right.
getting a lot of calls from them when, normally if somebody's lived in a house, they kind of know what to do. So
Well, I'm just kind of curious. So you have, well, I like the way that you do it too, because I've had, when I was doing the rent to own model, I got four houses under contract, but I didn't have any buyers. So for you, you're doing the buyer first, and then they're picking a house. Are you buying these houses creatively or
well,
just cash? But don't you have to put down 20%?
yeah. So yeah, we got to put down 20%.
So you put down 20% and then your buyer's coming in bringing in 10%.
Right.
So
So that,
then you're covering that spread in the beginning.
yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
like normally as an investor, like we got to put down a full 20. This
Yeah.
is cutting that in half. So you can do twice as many deals. So
Oh,
that's a
gotcha.
beautiful
Okay.
thing. And that's some good skin in the game. That's insurance. We
Hmm.
we give them full credit for that
Hmm.
10%. Sometimes
Right.
they put down more. Like if they're going into higher price range, we'll ask for more. Um, like we did a rural one in Colorado. It's 4 hours from Denver. There was a lot of issues. There's reasons that the other big companies, which have all pulled out of the market recently,
Hmm.
um, don't do rural.
Yeah.
We did it and it all worked out. Like they ended up buying the house. But they put down 15%. So the investor only had to put down five.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Are you bringing in private money to cover that spread?
Well, in this case, yes. It's just anybody, excuse me, an investor that would normally just go buy a regular rental,
Hmm.
20% down and get a loan.
Yeah.
So we're leveraging loans. So like in that case, it was just one investor.
Hmm.
That's how we do it. One investor per property. He put down 5%. The tenant buyer put down 15, and then he got a loan. Um,
Oh,
so we
gotcha.
got to make the numbers work. So
Hmm.
we can talk a little bit more about that. If you
Yeah. So then you have two loans. So I'm assuming institutional debt goes on first position, and then the private money comes in second position, and then you have the tenant buyer who has uh no real position, but they have the option to buy it at the end, right?
Right, yeah.
Um, so then how are you charging and how are you setting the price? because let's just say it's a $400,000 house. What are you
Mhm.
selling it to what's the price that you're selling it to the tenant buyer?
So we want to be fair,
Hmm.
and make it work. So we just kind of look at what the market is, the general market in an
Hmm.
area. So, like Denver, we've done like 4 to 6% increase each year.
Oh, gotcha. Hmm.
Base, base,
Yeah.
because here's the reality. You can set this huge price and get somebody to agree to it, but when they go to get a loan and cash you out, it's got to appraise.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we can't control what it's going to appraise for.
Right.
Appraisers can have all sorts of different numbers, and then the
Hmm.
market can go down, it can go up.
Yeah.
Like during COVID, it was shooting up. So,
Hmm.
like we helped another real estate agent in Minnesota. He actually picked out a duplex and lived in one side. But at the end of it, at about a year and a half, he's self-employed, like most people that we help are self-employed.
Hmm.
He, he was able to buy that and had enough equity because we only charge him like 4%, say, and market had shot up. So he walked into like 60 grand and
Hmm.
he was able to go buy a single family home and keep that duplex. And we made good money too,
Yeah.
but it can go down too, right? And
Hmm.
so there's a bunch of different things we can do if it goes down and doesn't appraise, right? Um, if they want to kick in a little extra money to cover that appraisal gap, they can do that.
Yeah.
Um, we can just wait, extend the option period in the lease, and let the
Hmm.
market come back. So that's kind of the easy one. That's usually what we start with. So there's different things because, like I said, we want it to work out. It's not good
Yeah.
for anybody for it not to, and
Right.
we can't control everything, but we want to set them up. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the person that you learn from is someone who taught my previous mentor. And so the goal was always to make sure that I mean they didn't even do lease options. They always did lease purchases because the goal is always to get the buyer to the finish line so that they can actually own the property.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I don't know. I know like in Colorado, we used to have contract for deed docs like through the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Mhm.
They took that away a few years back just because it was a problem. But and I've also had attorneys through the lens of an investor say, don't do contract for deed, don't give them equity. Um, So we've just done straight lease options.
Mhm.
Um, but buyers might be like, well, I'm not gonna do it if I don't get that deed,
Right.
contract for deed. So
Yeah.
or well,
Yeah.
yeah. We're going down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah. So then for your lender, how did you find a lender that would work with you on these types of transactions?
Um, I talked to a lot of lenders. I actually teach a continuing education class for agents. They get credit, and then I always try to invite lenders. So that's a good way to find lenders.
Mhm.
But I mean, when most lenders, they don't, they think of rent to own as like taking business away from them.
Mhm.
But when they realize we can tee up somebody that they've can't qualify right now and
Mhm.
get them a home, they need to get a loan. So that's a really good kind of, a lead, not even a lead, like they're in the pipeline.
Right.
They need a loan.
Mhm.
And then that lender could also give our investor a loan. So they could basically get two loans out of one junk lead.
Right.
Once that's kind of the eye opener when I teach the class, like how they do that. And the same with not the exact same with agents. Agents, we can pay them out, if it's an on-market deal.
Mhm.
Um, so they're winning too. It's like there's all these different wins when you set it up the way we do it. So
Yeah, there's a lot of people that make money.
yeah,
They can't
I,
make more money this way.
I counted 13 different people that made money just kind of because it's a traditional thing. Like there's an inspector involved. Actually, that rural deal, multiple inspectors because there's septic and water
Mhm.
testing and
Yeah,
layers for rural appraiser. There's a lot of people involved in any real estate transaction. This is it's quite a few.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the rent to own is one way, right? One of three. What's your second way that you're, I guess, in real estate?
Okay, so back to the way we do it, being super selective with the rent to own,
Hmm.
only finding people that have, excuse me, 10% or more down. There's not that, there's a lot of them out there, but just finding them has been kind of slow for us because we're being
Hmm.
so selective. Um, our market to Denver is hard to make deals cash flow. You can get a little bit of an advantage making rent to own cash flow.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can charge a little bit more than the market rent um, without gouging people, right? It's got to be
Hmm.
reasonable. So um, we were like, what else can we do? Like we've got investors waiting for deals, and we're like, oh, we can't just, we don't have a flood of good tenant buyers. So we were like, what else can we do? Also, we have a lot of people that in the same position where they maybe can't go get a loan for a $600,000 house and put 20% down, which that's 120,000,
Hmm.
minus the 10%, but
Yeah.
not everybody's in that position or can do multiple ones, right? But they might have 50 grand or 100 grand in like their IRA,
Hmm.
but that's it. Like they can't go get a loan for another house. Like they're but there's a ton of people like they say there's like, trillions or whatever sitting in IRAs like that
Yeah.
in the stock market,
Yeah.
they want to invest in real estate. So that, as you know, that's a good fit for like a multifamily syndication. So pooling money and going and buying apartment buildings, that's why we got into that. And so we've raised for two projects
Hmm.
um so far. We kind of put that on pause, just to get a little in the weeds on the money raising, like capital raising side on that.
Yeah.
For it to be worth it, you got to raise quite a bit of money because there's a ton of attorney fees up front setting up the syndication and the JV agreements and things. So if
I've heard that 5 million is the minimum before you even think about having a fund. Or is that too high?
oh oh to create an actual fund, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because a fund, I mean, shoot, you're probably talking 25 grand or more just to
Hmm.
set up, just a syndication, let alone I think if you're setting up a fund, like where you
Hmm.
can invest in multiple properties, that's even more, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, because we've only kind of dealt with what we've talked about the fund of funds model.
Hmm.
So it's just basically multiple different people raising money for one syndication. So
Yeah.
that's what we've done.
So if, for the fund of funds model, if correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically you just create a smaller fund, which then feeds into a bigger fund.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then, uh, I mean, what are the restrictions? Are the same regulations, rules and regulations, um, are they the same as the larger funds when you do a fund of funds, or are there anything different?
Yeah, it's just like call it a sub fund of the one individual fund for one property, right? So
Hmm.
that's syndication's one property, as
Yeah.
opposed to, like I said, setting up a fund where you have multiple properties. That's where it gets even more dicey. I mean, there's benefit to that, right? Because you're
Hmm.
spreading risk out amongst multiple properties
Yeah.
instead of just one, but there's more moving parts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So you put a pause on that. So then what's the third route that you've gone?
We've gone right into co-living, so renting by the room. which is not a new concept. I mean, I've got friends that do that. Like it's basically house hacking if you live in
Hmm.
it.
Right.
But this is more for people that aren't really familiar with the term is just more on the investment side. And so we're doing it way more professionally. So um, we work with pad split.
Hmm.
So just to talk about how it's kind of structured. So pad split is really good at finding residents, screening them, and then they kind of help triage. So like if there's disagreements amongst people, they can handle that. We tend to handle that more directly. If there was an eviction, they would kind of triage that. But that's all they do. They're kind of like the Airbnb app for co-living, right?
Hmm.
So where we come in, we're hosts. So we kind of do an extra look at the residents, give the final okay,
Hmm.
help them get set up in the house. Um, and then kind of to back up too. So either taking a regular rental that's a good fit for co-living and turning it into co-living house, fully furnished is how we do it.
Hmm.
Um, or going buying something on market, which like same thing with Denver with the rent down, it's harder to cash flow. We're not as bad as California. Like we can make it work. It's we have to do certain things to make it work, right?
Yeah.
Um, so either buying something on market or buying something creative, like subject to, I know most of the guys that are in the co-living space are finding stuff that creative, so they can get that low interest rate. But um, yeah, so that's what we've gotten into.
So
Um,
for the co-living space, what determined what when you look at a property, what are you looking for?
mm, okay, so our buy box is basically 2,000 square feet or more. Um, we want to be able to put in 6 to 8 bedrooms in a single family home.
Mhm.
So, good thing about Colorado, most houses have basements, right? Um, challenge with that is a lot of them are older and don't have egress windows. So, because
Mhm.
we want to be compliant, so it's a conforming bedroom. So,
Yeah.
we might have to add egress windows and figure, okay, well, there's 5 grand just to do that
Yeah.
per room. Um, so that's kind of the main thing. And then no HOA. So here's the beautiful thing about Colorado. Our governor just passed a law 4 months ago saying there's no limit to how many unrelated people live in a home.
Oh, yeah. That's really good.
And the reason, I mean, is like it's our affordability is terrible for rents and to buy. And
Yeah.
so that solves it, because getting a 1 bedroom apartment's 1,500 bucks or more.
Mhm.
And so they can live in one of our homes for 800 bucks, give or take. Um, so it's solving that affordability problem. And that's why we were like, light bulb, like there's a lot more people that need that and want that than maybe buyers that only fit our 10% down or more kind of, but also can't get a loan.
Mhm.
So it's like there's more opportunity there. So I like that we're helping people with rent own and also with co-living. We're actually helping people. And then, we can make money and our investors can make money. So
Do any of the tenants for the co-living properties, do they ever have express any kind of desire to get into actually home ownership? And then do you ever
100%.
transfer them into your rent to own program?
Yeah. We're kind of in the beginning stages of this, but I had a referral the other day, a guy that's what he wanted to do. And what's
Mhm.
cool is Pat Split has their own set of rules that we
Mhm.
have to live by. Initially, they were like, we don't want anybody house hacking and living in the house with the other residents.
Mhm.
And they just, at our last, we call it the Pad Split Town Hall, monthly town hall, they announced that they're going to allow that. So that that's beautiful because it's going to open up an opportunity for people to do that. So I'm like, yeah, I already had one guy say, "Hey, I want to go live in a house and kind of start to understand it, and
Mhm.
if I can teach him how to do it." Um, he was all about that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, especially, before if you're cool with having roommates, that's a really good you were already doing co-living anyways, you were going to do it, so um yeah,
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool idea.
yeah. What city do you live in Florida?
I live in Orlando or just outside of Orlando.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
How much co-living's going on there?
There's a decent amount. So I think there's a lot in Tampa and then there's a lot around here as well,
Yeah,
especially because we have a lot of people in the service industry
yeah.
with Universal and Disney. And
Oh, yeah,
so I hear that it's better for them to live in a co-living situation versus other housing situations just due to cost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because typically, if you were in like this price range that was under like on the low end, you might have to live in a gnarly, sketchy neighborhood where co-living, you might be able to live in a nice home. That's kind of our goal,
Hmm.
in nicer homes, not in the nicest neighborhoods. Because then you got the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. I don't want this
Yeah,
co-living.
yeah,
And there's
yeah.
things that we can do too, like kind of back to that buy boxes,
Mm,
parking. That's the number one thing.
yeah.
Um, and no HOAs because, um, like I said, we have no limit legally statewide how many people can live in a home. But
Hmm.
if parking's going to be an issue or the HOA can layer their rules,
Yeah.
then you can be done, so we find places that don't have HOAs. But yeah, so we find stuff that's in like B class, maybe high C. So it's
Mm.
still nice neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods. So
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a service being able to provide clean, safe housing
yeah,
to someone who doesn't need an entire place to themselves and they're happy with just a room.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. So I guess when you were first getting started in real estate, what was the biggest mindset issue that you had to get over?
Um, Good Lord. Real estate investing takes a lot of mindset shifts.
Uh,
I think for me, I'm not really good at numbers, formulas, and so that's where like partnering with somebody that can do that. Like Toby's a lot better at that, kind of understanding some of those concepts. So I rely on
mhm,
him for things like that. Um, but just knowing that you just got to keep at it. I guess that's
mhm,
the big thing is like keep at it. Like, it's been a roller coaster for us, just
mhm,
and trying to trying to find a focus, right? Get a niche
mhm.
down, but
Yeah.
then also looking around and seeing where can I pivot if I have to or make sense. So that's why we've done, multifamilies and then co-living. It's like all the skills have kind of built, but you got to stick with it. Like
Mhm,
we haven't given up, like we've had to grind it out. Like Toby's had to go like work with a remodeler, freaking
mhm.
knocking down walls like that's. But we're like this is our thing, right? Like you just got to stick with it. So that's yeah. So like I follow Tony Robbins. He actually
Mhm,
came to EXP, the brokerage I'm with, had him come. He hadn't spoken on stage for 2.5 years or something because of COVID, and he actually
mhm.
came to one of our events and did a full 1 day thing with us.
Oh, wow.
Like I follow a lot of like mindset people on Instagram and stuff, like
Mhm.
meditate, like trying to get through some of these challenges. Like it can be a lot, but so like, mindset is huge. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, so I'm trying to meditate. I've been
Yeah.
trying it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I don't know. It
Okay.
has not worked out very well because the whole time I'm sitting there meditating, like I wake up early now and I sit there on the couch for 5 to 10 minutes. And as soon as I sit down, I'm thinking about all the things that I should be doing other than sitting here doing nothing. So
Yeah.
what are some good books you recommend or videos on how to meditate better?
Oh man, I love this. So I'm glad you're doing this. It's such a where do we even start? Meditation is, a lot of the focus of meditation is the just try to clear out your mind and focus on one thing, focus on your breathing. And that's good, but when you're a person that's got a lot going on and your brain's just spinning, that's really hard.
Yeah.
So don't beat yourself up on that, and like just know, like, if you lose track, you lose focus, you start thinking about something,
Hmm.
and then you realize, oh shoot, my brain went off. Just reset. Like don't be hard on yourself. That's just
Hmm.
it. Um, but there's other ways of looking at it. Like, instead of trying to focus on one thing, just kind of create awareness for everything. Like the
Hmm.
opposite. Like,
Yeah.
what am I hearing? What sounds am I hearing? What am I seeing? How's my body feel? Like, is it cold? Is it hot? Am I anxious? Like,
Hmm.
everything. Just try to, like, open your mind to everything. That's a lot easier for me than I
Hmm.
think most people. So
Yeah.
that's one technique. Um, I think the there's a book called The Headless Way I haven't read, but the idea is that, like, is are you in here, like in your
Hmm.
head, or because they have you like do this exercise where you kind of try to focus on, like, where's the center. Is it really in here, or is your consciousness, like, everywhere, like not focused in one spot?
Hmm.
Um, which I guess the point of that is to think, like, you're kind of looking at yourself from outside, like your thoughts. That's the kind of weird thing. Like, they're not really coming from you. It's kind of
Hmm.
more, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. So back to your question, the Waking Up app.
Hmm.
So have you heard of that one?
I have not.
Oh my goodness. For so Sam Harris is the founder of it, and he wrote a book called Waking Up. It's The app kind of took over that name, but it's a meditation app. So cool. He's got like a beginner series that you can follow, um, that kind of walk you through a bunch of the different things. Like I said, like focusing on your breathing versus, you know, kind of thinking about everything, kind of all these different kind of tricks, for lack of a better term, different
Hmm.
ways to meditate. Um, and then he curates a bunch of interviews with multiple people. Um, there's a series I really like. This younger guy, Aussie guy, has one called, oh, uh, I just blanked. Anyway, he basically does these like short, like 5 minute things, like not every day, but he's got a bunch where he's
Hmm.
just kind of like talking about his struggles trying to meditate,
Yeah.
and wins, and just things to think about. He's really insightful, interesting guy, musician, artist. Um, so anyway, it's a really cool app, worth the price. Like, it's a paid app.
Hmm. Yeah.
I find it worthwhile to pay for it. But yeah, that one's like, I
All
think you
right.
should check it out. Anybody watching should check that out if they're interested, because meditation, it's more, for me, mindfulness,
Hmm.
like just being aware of negative thoughts, any kind of thoughts, just kind of, stepping back and being aware of where my mind should be, how I'm feeling, all that stuff, and kind of being, kind of goes along with stoicism. I also
Hmm.
follow, like Ryan Holiday. Um, uh, what's his book? Um, I'm blanking. Anyway, yeah,
I'll
look
have to
look
look
up
him. Yeah.
look
I'll
up
look
Ryan
up Ryan.
Holiday, stoicism. You know,
Yeah.
got, oh, the Daily Stoic. So he's got, it's kind of cool. What he's done is taken um, kind of the classic Stoics, Seneca, as an example, and
Mhm.
takes like these quotes written in there, kind of old timey,
Yeah.
uh, flourished script, and then he basically translates it into modern so you can understand what they're talking about, and
Mm.
uses examples of from modern day, so he kind of breaks it down so you're not kind of caught up in the in the weird language.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, well, James, I appreciate you coming on. How can people reach out to you and how can people work with you?
Just go to Linktree /partner with James Brown. I've got all sorts of links to the show that I host, other shows that I've been on, um, different ways to partner with me as if you're an agent. So,
And
um,
everything you do is in the Denver area or Colorado?
no, no. I mean, we've done lease options in the Midwest, Florida
Oh,
also. Our
okay.
syndications have been other areas.
Okay.
That's why we also started a private investor club. There should be a link in there too,
Hmm.
um, because like with syndications, without going down the rabbit hole too much, there's two types. Some of them have to be if accredited investors, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And other ones can be accredited or non-accredited, meaning they don't have boatloads of money. Um, so in that case, if you create an investor club
Mm.
and bring people in and have a relationship with them ahead of time, then you got to do that. So people can join our investor club if they go to that link.
Okay.
So
Cool. Yeah, I will definitely have that in the description. James, thank you again for coming on.
yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I know this was kind of all me blabbing, but I'm glad to have met you and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, cool.